Hey, hi there, Rick Hansen here with the Amazing Greats podcast. Our purpose is to deep dive into the life and career stories of famous athletes, authors, actors, musicians, and business leaders. But most importantly, to hear about their powerful walk with Jesus, as well as to share in real time how God is working in their lives right now. Now in season 2, episode number 32, we hear from a guy who's been in more basketball arenas, spent more time on the basketball court than even the most seasoned NBA players. And he's been up close and personal with every basketball legend in the game. So great to hear the Ed Rush story. I have the distinct privilege today of talking to literally a legend in his career, someone who has probably spent more time on a basketball court than any basketball player ever did. And he not only was on the court, but he was kind of the boss. You know, he was in charge of all of the major things that happened. We're talking today with Ed Rush. Ed is joined the NBA as a referee in 1966 at the age of 24. That's the youngest age of any NBA referee. You have a 32-year career in the sport, including refereeing for 2,000 regular season games, close to 400 playoff games, and 32 final games. And here you are with me, Ed Rush. Welcome.
Thanks, Rick. I've heard a lot of great things about Amazing Greats. I saw some of your interviews. You're doing great stuff. So anything I can do to contribute. I don't know about the legend part. That would be maybe in a few people's minds, maybe my kids. But it's nice to hear from you and nice to be with you.
Great, great, great. So let's talk about what an amazing adventure that has been on the court. And you were on the basketball court with the biggest and greatest basketball players in the world of all time. Guys like Wilt Chamberlain and Larry Bird and Spencer Haywood, and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan. What was that like, for gosh sakes?
Well, I'm surprised you didn't give a bunch of the Sonics names. 'Cause I did spend a lot of time in Seattle. Well, let me say this. I grew up as a sports fan. I was really connected to sports. My peers, the community I was in, we were always playing or going to ball games. I was a really big football fan. I was a really big baseball guy. I loved basketball, but I was not a very good player. So at the age of 14, a gentleman by the name of Ken Truscott, who had a lot to do with leading me to Christ, said, "Hey, come over here. I don't want you to play, but I'll give you $10 every Saturday. You come referee these kids' games." And I got out there and I started working on his metal whistle, made my mouth slur. And at the end of each day, I got the $10, but that was it. It was like, wow, that was fun. Man, I got hooked at an early age. So when I went to college, I continued to work, and then I worked through the high school and the small college thing. And then when I got out of college, I was coaching football. That was my true love. But to answer your question, I can't say that I was ever a really like overwhelming, passionate fan of basketball. I respected the game. I respected the athletes, but I was never in awe. But if you were to ask me about Walter Payton, I would say with him I was in awe. And I was a big Philadelphia Eagles fan growing up in Philadelphia. So I was, the football players were guys that I looked at and said, wow. The baseball players, being in Philly all those years with the great guys like Mike Schmidt, etc. I was somewhat in awe. But Will Chamberlain was a wonderful guy, a great athlete, a guy I enjoyed being around, had a really interesting personality. But I was not in awe of him. I mean, I had a job to do, and so I was able to focus on my job without saying, "Oh, that's Will Chamberlain." Now, training referees that we do now, we do have to take in some cases, we have to take the ball player or the fan out of them so that they can get themselves to that place where they don't feel any kind of feeling like, oh boy, who is that? There has to be a respect, a mutual respect that you develop, and it doesn't come if you're looking at somebody at a level of, being at all.
Was there
So
any? Can you remember a flashback on any times where there was a controversy on the court with one of the well-respected basketball players that we know of, something that kind of exploded on the court. I'm sure those kinds of things happened where there was an argument about the call and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Who are the most I don't know I don't know if I want to use this word, but contentious of the
Oh, okay.
basketball players?
I've had that question asked many times. Rick, my list is short because I came in the league and I was 24. And we only had 10 teams. So we were and there was only 10 players per team. And the travel was by train mostly. And these arenas that were 12, 14,000 seats. It was, in today's standards, it was minor league. So during that time, it was like family. I mean, we worked. Yeah, it was there. They had, how about that? But there was never a lot of the pushback, the emotional pushback that unfortunately you see today on TV more than you should. But as the league grew and the money became greater, the pressures became greater. We had more of that. I guess to answer your question, the one person who stands out would be Dennis Rodman. Now, he was an on the edge guy. And the thing about him is that he played with incredible aggression and passion. He played hard every possession, but there was times when he would misdirect his aggression towards the officials. And then that was something that we had to rein in. And obviously we had boundaries. And many, many, many times he went over the boundary.
Oh,
And it was interesting because, if you have time, the story about him is that he and I would say, consistently locked horns. And fortunately for me, I was in a position where if he didn't want to be in compliance, then he could leave. And that happened many times.
yeah.
And then I showed him where to go, and the door was over there, and we'll see you again. Goodbye. So that continued to happen, and it bothered me because I think, you know, this kid is a really, really very passionate young man. I knew he had his challenges in life. I knew his coach very well, Chuck Daly. I'm thinking there's got to be a better way for me to communicate other than saying, Dennis, you got to stop that. Let me see if I can find some other ways. Well, sure enough, I don't really actually started to pray about this. I mean, I have a game in Denver, and I have the TV on during the day, and all of a sudden he shows up with his midday person, and they're talking about asthma, which he had, and I was like, oh, I didn't know he had asthma. I do too, And all of a sudden he started talking about how he handled the altitude in Denver with asthma. That was the whole theme, And he was talking about his inhalers and taking them on the court, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm thinking, wow, there's a common ground there because I carried one of these things out on the court every game. And especially in Denver, you had to use it maybe a little more than nothing. So during the game, we had a play that he was standing on the free throw line. I was standing right next to him. And he started, yo, Ed. Before he could say it, I said, Dennis, how you doing? I saw you on TV today. That was great. Boy, I really enjoyed that. And I said, I'm asthmatic also. And I started to tell him about a new medication that my doctor had just given to me. I said, this stuff is phenomenal, Dennis. Well, it'd be amazing. He goes, oh, no kidding. We're going back and forth. We shoot the free throw. We go to the other end. We come back again. He walks over. He says, hey, make sure you let me know about that thing. So we had like 4 different conversations during the game with the asthma, right? He had halftime. He said, now remember, can you get that to me? I said, oh, yeah, I'll do that. So I got him the information. I sent it to him. And after that, that was, hey, Ed, how you doing? How the lungs today? How you feeling? Hey,
Really?
So I was thinking about you. Watched you play the other night. It seemed like you held up pretty good. So we found that common ground, and we got off the contentiousness of whether he was getting the shaft or not, because he really had one of those victim personalities.
Yeah.
Like he always thought we were out to get him. And after that, he didn't think I was out to get him anymore.
Huh.
More like, hey, Ed had something to help me. Maybe
Yeah.
he's not the bad guy.
That
So,
is so cool. Commonality, finding that commonality creates this bond that's
yeah.
incredible. And he probably visioned you always as the enemy, right?
Yeah. He wanted to put his hand in the cookie jar, and we were the ones who were putting our hand over top the cookie jar. We wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do. And, for him to play effectively, he had to be very physical. and there's a limit, or there's a boundary to that, and many times he would push the edges. So we had to referee him hard. I mean, you couldn't not look where he was. You always had to know where he was on the court.
Yeah. Well, what about the flip side of that? Who's the sweetheart of the NBA?
Well, I'll give you three, and I wasn't anticipating this question. One was one of your guys in Seattle. So I would say um, one would have been Jack Sikma, as well as downtown Freddie Brown. They were great communicators. They had an issue, they would ask you about it. The other one was Julius Erving. Um, and then I would put Michael Jorden in that category also. And so what's the common thread? Those individuals all, despite the fact that they were competing at a very high level and decisions we were making affected that, they had an underlying foundation of respect for the officiating community. They knew the challenges that we had, and they knew we weren't going to get them all right. There was a level of understanding that all those guys had, and you could say to them, I think you're right. I missed that call, and that'd be fine. Like, end of conversation. Hey, don't worry about it. It's okay. Well, and that was the kind of communication you had with those individuals. There was a lot of them in the league. Just because of the type of young men that the character that people have to be to get to the league. And there's a perception that maybe that's not true, but it really is. These are the best of the best. And it was a privilege to be out there with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And to know the best of the best, to still have a humble and a gentlemanly side as well, is kind of encouraging and inspiring, really. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
What about the physicalness of the game? You're the only one that's on the court the whole time, and game after game. And I had no idea, and I did my research, but nobody said you had asthma. And so this is all new information for me here. So did you, build up your resistance in exercise in other ways, or was all your exercise on the court?
Well, if people on this the podcast would know about training in the 60s, they would know that it doesn't come close to resembling training today. So flexibility work was rarely heard about. It was kind of like the basic exercise: lift some weights, do some sprints, run some distances. But the stuff that I was doing during that time was really counteractive to a long career, because I was shortening my hamstrings without doing the stuff that would lengthen. You go to a game today and you get there early, you see the players on the floor with the trainers, the sports science people with bands, and they're being stretched out. Well, they're all being stretched out. This is in all sports. Well, that was not existing. So as a result, I really developed a backside that really wasn't as functional as it should be. And then the end of the 70s, 79, I had a disc, and was painful low back surgery that I had. And the surgeries then, they opened you up like big time, right? Long. So I was out for a little while, but that led to another surgery. I've had 7 altogether. And I think I look back when I started, and I think if I did a better job of body maintenance and flexibility training, I may not have gone through that.
Yeah, yeah. So was there time spent off the court with the stars of the game? Did you go out to dinner with them or have a beer or anything?
No.
Nothing?
No, that would be a serious no.
Oh, okay.
It was important that we maintain a professional distance. If you think about it, if the Boston Celtics were playing the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Celtics heard that I had dinner with Magic Johnson, there would be a rampant paranoia. We have no chance, right? So we can't give any even illusions of that. There's none of this arm around a guy or hugging or what professionally. But now I will say this: that all changes when they retire.
Oh,
when you retire, you run into them, you see them. I got a lot of Facebook friends that are former players. And that's that's different then because they don't have anything to gain, and I don't have anything to give to them or take away. But when you're on the court and you're part of that, you have to make sure you maintain a professional distance.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now that I look back at that question, I could totally get that for sure.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing that seems to me as a difficult part of the job of your job is the emotional part of it, meaning that at every game with every call, some people love you and some people hate you. And you kind of always lived with that negative side of that you can never really win with a call because there's going to be opposition to everyone. How did you deal with that emotionally?
You might be surprised at this answer, but really what happened outside the lines was something that we people rarely heard. It's like a mass of voices. You don't hear individual voices unless, there have been a few times when I worked and there weren't very many people in the stands. Not very often, but when that happens, you can hear, "Hey, Rush," up in the 12th row. Da, 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 you hear that. But when there's like Seattle, wall to wall, packed house every night, you don't really hear anything that's going on up there at all. Um, I think from the emotion is more of a when we talk about sports psychologists and mental training, it's more of the on the court interaction or what we call mistake recovery strategy and staying focused, one possession at a time, not allowing one mistake to lead to another mistake. That's all within the lines. But outside the lines, there's no influence on that at all.
I just want to jump back to your first job with the NBA as a referee. You were, I heard the salary at that point was huge. Um, just as an aside, tell us what you were making as the new guy with the NBA.
So my first year, I was 24. I was teaching school, coaching football. So this was like a part-time gig. I just went occasionally to a game. And so they gave me a whopping sum of $75 a game. And then I was able to, I fill out a little thing and my expenses. So that was fun. I mean, I'm seeing the country. I was 24 there. In the next year, the commissioner asked me to come in, and he said, "We'd like you to work full time for us." And he said, "I'm going to guarantee you $6,000." And it was basically $100 a game, 60 games, and it didn't take me long. He says, "No, if you agree to that, you sign this little thing." So I was able to quick do the calculation, and I was making 5,000 teaching school and 500 coaching football. So he said, "This is good. I got a $500 raise like that." And I can see the country. So that was the first full time deal.
It was
Was
$100 a game. Wow.
that was $6,000 for the season, guaranteed, and I was happy as the lark.
Yeah, yeah. And like you say, saw the country, traveled a lot, and that had to be a great experience. And also an experience that is a little distracting from a home life. But at that point, you were pretty much single during those
Yeah,
years, right?
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, the referees and the umpires. It's really challenging, and they have to really have a strong spouse, somebody who just really buys in. I really think today, I'm close with a lot of the younger referees, the guys with young families, and when they come in as a family. Like the wives are partners. Hey, how you doing? And I think the difference today, you have FaceTime. You can put the kids to bed. Now you do Zooms. I know a lot of the guys. They connect with their family every night. And off night on the road, and they're gonna really virtually get together with the family. That really makes a big difference. That has disappeared.
Now, in 1998, your career kind of shifted because in 1998 was the year that you actually were put in charge of the officiators in the NBA. Did that take you out of the game itself, or did you continue to do refing
You could not do both, but I had a. What took me off the court was back surgery number, it was either 4 or 5.
Oh my gosh.
This was a cervical, and the surgeon was in fear of that having to go up one more level and then I'd be frozen. I wouldn't be able to have any turning at all in my head.
Oh.
And at that point, I said, I think I have a lot more years here to be productive. I think I'm out. And so that was after 32 years. So I retired, told the league actually went out on disability. So I was out for that season. And it was during that season they came to me and asked me if I was interested in working in the league office. And I said, I thought about it for a while. Trudy and I went through a lot of back and forth. And I said, okay, I'll go. It was interesting, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do forever. It was highly stressful in a really challenging environment because it was never good news. Every day you were in a major problem solving. Like people weren't going to call up and say, well, we had a great game tonight here in Utah. And owner or general manager, yeah, we lost by 5, but boy, those referees, they were outstanding. That call did not happen.
Never got that, huh?
But it was like, hey, what happened here? Would you look at this? Would you look at this? Would you look at this? If this was a different decision, I don't think we would have lost this game. That was a regular occurrence. So,
is there such thing as a reversal on a call?
Well, today they have a coach's challenge. They have one per game. And they could go over to the monitor and look in the coach's challenge, and they can do that, which is a really good addition with the technology they have. And then we always taught that we could conference, so if I had a call and you looked at the play and said, Ed, wait a minute, I think we got something different here. Let's come together. We'd come together, we'd conference, and then we'd try to come out by collaborating our information. We come out with the best decision. I mean, that happened, but now they have technology to do that because they've got a really highly sophisticated replay center, which is up in Secaucus, New Jersey, and they have referees in there and screens all over the place. Every camera in the building is hooked to a screen, so they can see every possible angle. It's remarkable the work that they do now.
Crazy. That's good. So there was a Wikipedia note that talked about something that happened in 2013 in the locker room. You told a joke at that point. Can you tell us that story?
Sure. Because I think it's really a God story. I was a coordinator for the Pac-12 officials, and I never refereed college basketball, so I didn't have experience with that, but I knew refereeing and I knew basketball, and so I was coaching these guys hard, trying to get them to a level that I thought they should have. I mean, I think we had a group that was talented, but a lot of them underachieved. So I was coaching them hard all year, and they never had anybody do that before, and that was to a lot of them was bothersome. Others, they like anything else, they loved it. So we're in the conference tournament in Las Vegas, and we had a situation where the officials did not address a sideline situation that should have been addressed. A lot of emotion and things were outside of the guidelines. And so after the game, just to try to bring a little light to it, I said, so what will it take me to get you guys to address that? Because to me, that was pretty clear. You want a reward? You want a trip to Cancun or $5,000? Well, the mistake in that was that there was some 3 or 4 guys in the back of the locker room getting ready for the next game they were not on. I was not on their Christmas card list. Because I'd been demanding with them during the season. And all of a sudden they went, now we got them. So they ran that as quick as they could to ESPN. And basically they said, hey, Russ has got a bounty on the coach of Arizona because he told them if he did something, he'd give me either $5,000 or a trip to Cancun. Well, the media went with that crazy. It was like, oh my gosh. And, nobody called me and asked me. It was just, and unfortunately, the commissioner got in a place where he said, this is really tough. I said, Larry, the commissioner was a great guy. I said, let's take the heat off here. I'm out. And at that time, it was bothersome in the way it happened. I wanted to go out on my own terms. It took Rick about 6 months to look back and I'm going, oh, this is why this happened. God had a purpose for allowing this to happen. At that time, when we were involved, we had been in a company that we had started several years before called Court Club. And I had told my son and another fellow who was working with us, I said, look, conflict of interest. With me doing this thing with the Pac-12, I'm going to have to be less, really going to have to be in the background here, and you guys run this, right? And this was reaching out to officials all over the world. And really, we looked at it as ministry. Well, 6 months later, we looked back and our membership had grown by 25%. And it was remarkable. And all of a sudden, I said, this is really clear. I would not be talking to these people all over the country, all over the world, if I was still doing this thing with the Pac-12. I wouldn't be talking to any of them. And now today, with Zoom and the other technologies, what we're doing now is I'm really proud of it. And we've really made a major impact in a lot of people's lives. But it's really like God using us. My wife Trudy is very involved in helping, and Ed Jr. and another fellow by the name of Rob Rourke was an SEC referee. But we're really teaching life as much as we can, and they know where I stand with Jesus. I mean, we talk about that unashamedly, and it's really evolved from that spot when that locker room deal to where we are now.
So tell us a little more about Court Club Elite.
Started
what exactly is that?
We started 15 years ago. My son Ed, entrepreneur, great visionary, came to me and said, "How do referees know, like, the path to take to improve, to enhance their schedule?" My answer is, it depends on where you live and who you talk to. There's no program. No, you have to reach and figure it out. Some areas of the country, it's not so good. Others better. Okay, good. How about if we start something that teaches people all of those concepts? So the first thing we did is that he rode around with me with a tape recorder, and for about 4 months we just talked, and they were quotes, etc. And we wrote a book. He wrote the book, put my name on it, called Ad One, and was really all the things you do to get better, to improve your game, to make yourself a better product for other people to hire. From that book, we got tremendous outpouring of questions. Help me with this, help me with this, help me with this. So we started conference calls. From conference calls went DVDs. The DVDs, then all of a sudden we're now evolved to all the streaming that we have now, the Zoom stuff that we have now. And so we're reaching people every day. We can do a lot of individual work, one-on-ones, and it's really remarkable. I love it. I love hearing other people's stories, how they got to where they were. There's no two stories the same, as you know, from doing Amazing Greats. So I'm kind of doing a version of what you do, just hearing people about their journey, and then asking them, I think we can help you, because we're looking for people talented, motivated, coachable, and we fit into the coachable part.
Yeah. So, and is that are you the only ones doing it? Is that?
Yeah. There's yes, like we are in the we are.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's other people there's a couple other groups that are wannabes, I guess they're trying, but it's I think that the blessing I have is that because of the number of years I had in the league, I have so many people that are friends. I have contacts. This isn't just me. We get individuals to come in and be part of this. So a lot of former officials. We have coaches, sports psychology people. We have a wide variety of individuals. We had Dave Pesh from ESPN. So we have a lot of different folks. And it really came because I was fortunate enough to have these relationships, and we try to bring those individuals in to really to communicate with our group. And these are people otherwise they wouldn't hear from.
Yeah. So let's talk about your walk with Jesus. You were you Christian from your childhood? Tell us a little bit about how that journey all came together.
Well, Jane and Tom Rush were great parents, and we grew up in a little town outside of Philly. Flowertown. We went to Flowertown Presbyterian Church. Had to go there every Sunday. Go to Sunday school. Had a little envelope. Had my quarters in it. Did that. That was an exercise. That wasn't any different than going to the Boy Scouts. It was just
It's just what you did.
yeah. Well, I did, and it wasn't like I didn't hear, but it never went anywhere. It was in my head. I said, "Yeah, that's a good idea." I mean, I knew what Easter was about. I knew what Christmas was about, but it wasn't personalized. And so, if people would ask me, "Are you Christian?" So, "Oh yeah, I went to Flowertown Presbyterian Church." Of course. Okay, good. Uh, and frankly, it wasn't until I really started doing some hard soul searching, come to the fact that I wasn't really very content. Despite the outside looking in that I was successful, I didn't see myself that way. I wasn't very content. And I guess the shorter version of the story is that God happened to get me in touch with George Tolles, who I had known for years and years and years. And he and I were at a game in Canada, and we were on a flight, and then we had to get off the flight, and we had to get in a car, and we drove to Seattle. Well, George, there's going to be a lot of. We're not just going to talk about what player looked good and who had what batting average. We got deep, and he asked a question, and he's very good at listening to your answer and then asking another question off of that, right? And I'll never forget that ride because it got me to thinking like, oh, what really is that? Well, what does that really mean? What's it really mean to be a Christian? He said at the end of the ride, he said, "So look, I'll see you at the arena." We had a game that night, and he said, "I might be bringing a friend." Oh, I said, "Okay, cool." He said, "You might know him." I said, "Who's that?" He says, he's former Miami Dolphin, and he's the head of PIO. So I said, "Okay, that sounds good to me. I'm a football guy. I love it." Okay, so we get to the game, and afterwards, big locker room at the Kingdom. That's what we played at that time. I mean, a big, spacious locker room. So it wasn't like we were all three officials were like right in here. So we went into a little side room, um, and uh, and so Bobby Evans' husband. That's why I'll look at it because she gave up a night of anniversary uh, to allow this to happen. And so those guys presented the gospel in the most clear way that I've ever heard. And I would say it's the first time I really heard it, like really heard it. This is after a game. We're actually, by the way, I had a contentious situation on the court that night with Dennis Johnson, and at least half of it was my fault for my attitude. And this was the stuff that it was bothering me. Things were happening like that, and so they prayed about that, and so Norm Evans and George Tolles, myself, and the Holy Spirit was there. And I sensed that the presence of the Holy Spirit the first time in my life. And that at that point it was October 5th of 1979. Went back to my hotel and just wanted to be quiet. And I finally got on my knees. I said, "Okay, Lord, this is it. I can't do this by myself. You got to come join my team, and forgive me." And I went through all the things, and he did. And it was the change was incremental, and it was one that but I felt different. I had a different base by which I was living my life. It was definitely different. But I had a lot of fears. Like Ed's going to think people are going to think Ed went crazy. He's a Jesus freak. He's one of those born againers. Oh boy! But I got enormous support. And Norm and George were a big part of that. I mean, they didn't leave me alone. I mean, those guys, because I think that discipleship is one thing, lead a person to Christ, but don't leave them out there now. We got to go side by side and march with them, and there's going to be a little bit of beating up, and they have to hang in there.
And you had spent some time with self-help books. I remember you had a good library of self-help books that weren't doing the trick.
They say they read good though. I mean, they felt when you read, you go, that's a good idea, but it was all up here.
Yeah.
Nothing penetrated those 17 inches. Uh,
Yeah, and a lot of the things that I've found in the self-help books is stuff that's in the Bible that some people plucked out and made it their life's mission or their story. But all the good stuff in those self-help books was, derivatives of biblical scripture, really. It's amazing. So it all happened in a side room at the Kingdom. That's great. With Norm Evans and George Tolles, who's also, by the way, kind of my spiritual counselor too, ongoing. And like you say, is just always there for support when you need it. So what a wonderful guy he is. Was there challenges after you kind of experienced that? Challenges with doubt, fear,
yeah.
uh, things where there were unanswered prayers that you thought God should have answered but didn't?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll tell you what the most difficult thing for me. So I was like most athletes. I would use my share of four-letter words, and after receiving Christ, like that stopped. I mean, I didn't say to myself, "Stop doing that." It just stopped. Except my aggression on the court to keep control was one that, hey, hey, right? And I said, I really literally was praying. I said, God, you got to make a deal for me here. I got to be able to do this. You can't, just don't stop me from doing it. This is why I'm good. This is why I keep control, etc. And I said, I'm going to pray about this, but this is what I have to do. So I made like a side deal with God. And that was not that successful because I'd still go, oh, well, this is the way things gonna get you get slapped in the face. So I was in Philadelphia, and I was asked to speak at an FCA luncheon in downtown Philadelphia. So I did share my testimony, and that night I was working a game in Madison Square Garden, the Knicks and the 76ers, which is televised back to Philadelphia. And so game's going on, and I get into a debate with a player by the name of Daryl Dawkins, who was kind of a Dennis Rodman type, real aggressive, etc. And I was doing my thing, and all of a sudden, down on the baseline where I was standing, I'm there with him. I'm going back and forth, and I see this guy with his boom mic, and the mic's like right up there. And going, oh, no. All of a sudden, that flashed through my mind. All those kids, those high school kids that were at that FCA thing. I said, "Oh my! I wonder if they heard that." Oh no! Like everything I said was useless. They heard that. No, and I was like traumatized. I remember getting back on the train and going back and saying, "Okay, that's it. I got to stop right now." That was my lesson there. But there was fear that I was going to get run over because I wasn't going to be as strong. And we call it today when we teach this, we call it option thinking. That you go to other areas, that you do other things, like Dennis Rodman, common ground. And um, it was quite a long, maybe a whole season that I was not sure about whether I was really affected, but it did actually. It had a positive effect on my ratings, my going into the finals, the places I went. I didn't skip a beat, and I said, "Oh, I guess it works," because his way, as we know, right, as opposed to my way and a side deal was not working. But it was kind of interesting how that was brought to me like a slap in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an unanswered prayer that was God's answer to that
Yeah,
prayer.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So what about you've already mentioned one or two along the way here, but what about a situation where it was really obvious that God showed up and made some miracle thing happen? Some individual thing where you say, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's God." Much like your experience with um, uh, the sports joke turning into something that was
Right.
miraculous.
Yeah. I'll have to tell you one thing that involves George Tolles. So we lost our son at 32 years of age from a opiate overdose, and he had fought this hard. He'd been to all kinds of places, and he was a really gifted kid, tremendous athlete, had been recruited at University of Wyoming as a quarterback. And we were prideful of him, but he had a tough fight. And I mean, and there was a lot of drama in our life, like every day, just helping him fight the fight. And so he lost his life, and it was really hard on us. And I think almost about a year later, we're still processing through the grief. George Tolles calls me, and he says, "Ed, I've been really praying about this, and God revealed to me how He saved you and Trudy and Jeff and the rest of your family." And he then laid out all the things that we were doing, the amount of stress that was in our life, and how hard it was on Jeff. He was disappointing us on a daily basis, that there was no joy in his life. It was kind of sapping the joy out of ours. And the road that he was going was that he was either going to have what happened to him, or he was going to be incarcerated. I mean, that was really the path. And George was so clear on what was revealed to him. And it was, to me, it was like, wow, that really kind of cleansed me. I mean, we still think about him, we reminisce about things, but it's different now. And, we know he knew Christ. He, accepted the Lord as a Savior. In one of my last days with him, we went to worship together. So I knew where he was, and I knew that was a heck of a lot better deal than what we're doing. And so I knew that, he's there, and he got a head start. And I felt, and I think it was really like how God spoke to George, who spoke to us about that really was a game changer.
Thank you for sharing that. That's it's a vulnerable thing, and it's one of those things that certainly you lean on God for. I mean, that's where you get your strength out of all of that. So thank you for that. I promised you I'd keep you only about 30 or 40 minutes, but it's been over that already. So I think we better pull the plug on this and move along. But is there any way we can support you now on anything that you're involved in that we can support, or?
No, I think, we have a foundation with Core Club, which we are specific to helping referees who have economic challenges or other things. We just raised, I mean, we have an incredibly generous group, and we're really, really proud of that. We just had a campaign this past year, and where we raised money for pancreatic cancer, and a group called the Jack and Jill Foundation, which is like a Make-A-Wish for people going through this. One of our referees, Tony Brown, great, great, great guy, is fighting that disease. And, we're close, and I actually hired him when I was in the league office. And we raised that money in his name. He was so encouraged by that, and he still is. So I say this to you, thank you. But we have a group that all we have to do is say to them. And right now, we're actually reaching out to some referees who were in Ukraine, who were making a significant amount of money working games all around Europe, and their income has stopped, as well as referees in Russia. And so we're in the process now of finding out how we can work with one or two of those individuals to support them, economically, in a way that, that they know we're there for them.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ed, for taking the time with us today on Amazing Greats. I really appreciate it. God bless you. We'll be praying for all your good works that you're doing with your organization right now, and thank you so much.
Okay, all right, Rick, it was fun. I hope it paralleled somewhat with Ed Jr. We'll compare.
We'll have to put them up side by side and have people vote.
Thanks a lot, Rick. You're great to talk to.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye. Wow, what a wild, lifelong ride in the NBA, and so powerful to hear what God has done along the way in the life of Ed Rush. I loved his journey launch with our mutual friend, George Tolles, who continues to impact lives every single day. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Like, share, and subscribe to help to do your part to pass along these life-changing stories with others around the world. Clem Daniels is our producer. Thanks for joining us, and God bless.